I'd like to help you build the skills and mindset that'll eventually land you in the C-suite. I don't know how to do that because it's different for everyone. And nurturing a career is more art than science. So instead of telling you what to do, I'm going to share how I prep myself for my new CIO gig every day. Format simple. I'll sit here in my living room. I'll do a kind of daily stand up with myself, one topic per day for the next month or so. Wildly useful to me because it allows me to narrow my focus, which is a key part of getting any job right. And I'm hoping that'll be useful to you. Won't know till we try. I haven't seen a ton of content where you can get into the mind of an operator as opposed to a consultant. Most people at the top of their game are afraid to put themselves out there. It's good risk management not to. Why? Because if you're sharing at the same time as being in a C-suite or being a senior executive or just being a leader, you'll get sniped with seemingly innocent comments like, where do they find the time? That's someone who doesn't understand that better time management, more effective execution comes from slow thinking, a deliberate approach to problem solving that starts with a daily, almost spiritual commitment to reflecting on what you've done in the past 24, thinking through the next 24, what's around each corner, and figuring out the underlying why at the core of everything you plan to get done every day. It's not just a narrowing of focus, useful, but intentional mindfulness. Combine that with a practice of active listening, and you'll inevitably succeed at work, at life, at learning. If I were you, I wouldn't wait on any of the steers you hear me giving myself or any of the ideas I'm going to talk about for when you eventually become a CIO or COO. I wouldn't even do what I do, paint what I paint. I do your version, informed by all the questions you've asked of life and the answers it's given. That's how I got here. Playful, curiosity-driven, artful life. I've been operating with these principles, with this mindset for the last half century. That's how I landed in my senior roles. These ideas, some small amount of hard work, and a whole lot of luck. The good news is that I have nothing to sell, and I don't plan to have anything to sell on any of my channels. If you have more time to learn and want to get into the details of the business of banking technology or healthcare technology, I have a channel on YouTube called Educating Squirrels, obviously. Or if you learn by reading, join me at superserious.com, my site where I've been blogging forever, really. We start with day one, week one, tomorrow. Following each of the daily stand-ups, I'm going to do a quick bibliography segment, this one, where I share a book or two that would be a good pre-read for that day's topic. So let's get to it. Day zero reading list. Book one is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Every new CIO should read this if they haven't already. It's not a tech book, but it can help you avoid the pitfalls of overconfidence and confirmation bias in your decision-making. The more senior you are in an organization, the more you need to exercise humility. This book helps the more cerebral among us to get over ourselves. It's the science behind arrogance, our tendency to overestimate our own abilities and the accuracy of our judgments. Thinking fast and slow probably won't make you humble, but recognizing and correcting your biases is a decent start. Second book is The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. Again, not a tech book, but a good meditation on how to cultivate a mindset of openness and curiosity, which, along with humility, puts you at a decent position to foster innovation and collaboration in your organization. I love Rick's idea that creativity is not a talent or a skill that some people have and others don't, but a way of being that anyone can access and develop. Book numbers 3 and 4 are industry specific, and I usually won't do 4 or 5 books. I'll usually do 2, but these 2 are meant to be interesting reads that ground you in the language and culture of that sector. For instance, if you're in finance, read The Lords of Easy Money by Christopher Leonard. It's a fun read. Or if you're in healthcare, read Healthcare Insurance and Managed Care by Peter Kongsvit. It's a textbook, so less fun, but still important because it gives you depth and a language with which to speak about your new industry. Finally, If you're more of a podcast person, try Simplifying Complexity. I was drawn to it because of the title, because it's such a great description of what most of us do for a living. Your first 6 months as the incoming CIO of an established company is not about drinking from the fire hose. If it feels that way, that's a signal that you might not be asking the right questions or asking it of the right people. Your honeymoon needs to be spent understanding your business end to end. And that starts with relationship building, talking with people. On day one, fill your calendar with equal parts, key internal stakeholders, with your team, and with your company's clients. With your stakeholders, it's about understanding their expectations and establishing a cadence for information sharing. With your directs, it's about understanding their skills, their ambitions, the rocks they're expecting to move, and together, mapping their path for delivery and growth. And with your clients, it's about learning their end-to-end, the reasons they think your products and services are solving their problems. That last third, the client meetings, are the ones that rather unfortunately tend to be pushed out on your calendar for months, if not indefinitely. The rationale being that you need to first understand your business. Welcome to the first paradox as a CIO. You can't understand your business end to end without radical client centricity, without understanding how your clients run their business end to end, because your business processes don't start when a request from a client lands at your institutional boundaries. Your processes start in your client's shop. So not talking to clients until you're ready, until you understand your business end to end, means you'll never be ready. Meetings don't have to suck the life out of you. The best way to navigate them is to be deliberately curious and document what you're learning. Why? To learn and to establish credibility and trust. How? Continuously share what you're learning from these meetings with all the people who are on your calendar. Every stakeholder needs to understand what your other stakeholders need. Your directs and skip levels will always appreciate the rest of your information sharing, because most of the leaders before you put them into functional boxes, sharing what the previous leader thought their directs needed to know to do their specific job, but not what they need to know to grow beyond their current role. And your clients need to understand that their needs are the center of your universe. They keep you up at night, the driving force behind every activity in your company. So day one is not about drinking from the fire hose. It's focused relationship building. Yes, you're learning and facilitating learning. Exercising a learning mindset is huge. And just as importantly, you're demonstrating that you care about the people around you, that you care about the details, that you're open and transparent, collaborative and inclusive, that your goal is not to tell people what to do, but to listen and to find ways to serve them. Day one bibliography. First book is Deep Work by Cal Newport. One of your top 3 most important tools is focus. And this book lets you think about how to resist the temptation of multitasking and distraction in an age of information overload. A lot of it is obvious, so you're not reading to learn so much as to use it to meditate on how to work and think deeply. It's not going to teach you how to prioritize and protect your time and attention, but it might encourage you to give yourself structured blocks of time for deep work. And it's always a good reminder, an affirmation that focus should remain a focus. Next book, book 2, Give and Take by Adam Grant. The message here is that we're all more successful when we're more generous and less selfish in our interactions with others. A little preachy, but in business culture that looks down on spiritual texts, you have to fall back on social science. No judgment there. Just read what you need as long as it gets you to adopt what Adam calls a giver mindset and behavior. It's the right framework for building better relationships at work. Adam's book tends to read like Malcolm Gladwell's, fun storytelling, mostly because of the case studies and meta research. So worth it for entertainment alone. And finally, if you're more of a podcast person, start with the HBR Idea Cast. It's HBR, so it's not rocket science, but a lot of executives listen to it, which doesn't make it good, but does make it an opportunity for connecting with your peers, common ground. As I said yesterday, you'll want to meet with your direct reports and skip levels and figure out how you can serve them. But most people have their work armor on when talking to someone who they don't yet trust. So they'll be hesitant to take you up on some high level, how can I help kind of question, especially if they're stuck in a more traditional, my boss is going to tell me what to do mindset. So you need business context, functional context before you can figure out how to help them. This is a good point to remind yourself that before your first 6 months are up as the incoming CIO, there'll be unrealistic expectations about the speed with which you need to articulate and own tech strategy. But that expectation can serve you well because it gives you an excuse to go deep, to assess the current state of technology, to identify areas for improvement. So your agenda for the meetings with your directs and skips can be driven by what will be a thorough multi-month technology audit, reviewing existing systems, infrastructure, architecture, security, applications, processes, everything. The key to all of it is that you're going to want to get into the details, well past the usual PowerPoints, because how else will you find ways to help your people? Understand the business end to end. Dig well past the PowerPoints everyone already has and is eager to show you, because those slides assume business depth, or worse, they're not rooted in an end-to-end understanding of the business. They're a reflection of siloed thinking. Plus, most decks are upward facing. They're designed to inform and calm, to send the message, hey, we got this, which might be right, but is not useful if your goal as a leader is to find a way to serve. Upward facing decks mean that the only person in the org with a mountaintop view is the person at the top. Not cool. When everyone in an org walks up the same mountain, explains their little part of the scenery to the person above them, and then walks back to their cube, the one that intentionally blocks their view of the mountain, the business loses the value of diversity, the value of perspective, and just as bad, when the leader at the top moves on, just like all the leaders before them, they take that mountaintop view with them. No one else had it. The business loses continuity. So don't make that mistake. Break the cycle. Apply your learning mindset to the thorough technology audit you have to do. Use your need to educate yourself to learn the business end to end as a path to serve others, to educate them, everyone on the mountain. Set your bar higher and then ask the org, not just your directs, but the entire org, to learn with you. As you humbly walk down the mountain to learn, record that experience, not the decks, the interactions between you and the experts, and share. That's compelling content for everyone. When you share it broadly, it opens up everyone's path up the mountain to their next role. The final point here, encouraging others to continuously learn isn't enough. It has to be do as I do. The goal, as I audit, we all learn, we all grow. Day 2 reading list, Atomic Habits by James Clear. In the early days of any new gig, you want to be thinking about the systems and processes that make up your business, the natural and unnatural incentives that are at play. What James adds is the idea that systems are really a collection of habits. So you can think of change management both as a design exercise for systems/processes and in terms of the intractable habits that chain us to the old ways of doing things. That's a powerful idea when the common enterprise approach to change management is mostly a comms and training plan, which usually doesn't change behavior. It just expects it to be changed. Next book, The Power of Servant Leadership by Robert Greenleaf, the guy who coined the phrase in 1970. Open yourself up to this one, because when you sit on top of a large org, you're ideally placed to challenge the conventional wisdom of the hierarchical and authoritarian leadership styles that you grew up with. It's about living your values. Our day 0 reading list emphasized the importance of humility. Day 1 made the case for generosity. Today, day 2, the spotlight is on service, the intersection of humility and generosity. That's what serving others demands, whether those others are your employees, your customers, or your community. And finally, if you're more of a podcast person, try the Gartner talent angle. This one is also popular with a lot of executives because it's so broad in scope, covering psychology, economics, music, sports, anything really that gives you an edge in how to manage and develop talent and how to lead through change and uncertainty. Day 3, how do you as an incoming CIO develop a strategic IT roadmap that's aligned with your company's goals? I know this is going to sound obvious, but step 1 is to understand your new company's goals, their mission and vision. Most companies have that written beautifully somewhere, and it's too broad and too high level to be of any kind of use. So after you've read it and you've interrogated that year's budget through the lens of how it aligns with that mission, and you've used your regular stakeholder meetings to get their perspective, which hopefully informs yours, then ask yourself one counterintuitive question. Why are so many potential clients using your competitors, not you? Be careful, because the answer is rarely price or features or even quality of service. Usually the answer is at the intersection of trust and the human aversion to change. I know that's high level, so keep peeling the onion on what is it about your competitors that build trust with their customers? What is it about your company, your tech, the onboarding of your products and services that makes the cost of change too high for your potential clients to switch? This means that the strategic IT roadmap you're developing needs to exercise and increase, you guessed it, trust. I don't care what industry you're in. That's your company's goal. Increase trust. It's your goal too. Increase trust internally with stakeholders, with your team, and obviously increase trust externally with clients and potential clients. Building your IT roadmap is an exercise in building trust on multiple levels. You can and should recast the relationship we talked about on day 1. Your roadmap is what you want to do, but not by yourself. Trust tells you how you need to partner to jointly come up with that list, how you trust others and trust yourself. An example of trust building with internal stakeholders is better governance and better program execution. They'll tell you it's the how of delivering their business priorities and tech initiatives better, faster, cheaper. An example of trust building with your team is doing more listening than talking and being genuinely thankful that they're on the team. It's really that simple. An example of trust building with your external stakeholders is to improve their customer experience, how you sell, how you onboard, how you deliver value. Just remember that trust is measurable. So always inspect what you expect. Nothing should land on your roadmap unless you've established clear metrics around it and you have a path to monitoring them. KPRs, for instance. Why? Because you should regularly evaluate the roadmap's impact on the company's explicit business goals. Day 3 bibliography. Book number 1 is a book called Net Positive by Tom Parks, Paul Pullman, and Andrew Winston. I usually can't stomach books that read like a CEO patting his own back, but Paul did do something amazing at Unilever, so he kind of deserves the mic. The good news is that the book and message don't come across as overbearing. Just some executives living their values, contributing more to the world than they use or take. If your politics doesn't align with climate change or social justice, it's still worth a read because you stand for something, and that something is worth corporate courage, vision, and action. Next book, book number 2, Thinking in Systems, a Primer by Donella Meadows. This one's about how to manage VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. It's about how to understand and improve the complex and dynamic systems that you're going to face. That's your job. Systems thinking is a way of doing your job, of seeing the world as a network of interconnected and interdependent elements that influence each other through feedback loops and non-linear relationships. If none of that made sense, by the way, read the book. It might help you avoid the common traps and mistakes that often lead to the unintended consequences of systemic failure. And finally, if you're more of a podcast person, try A16Z. That's A16Z. That's the name of the podcast. It'll help you stay ahead of the curve, anticipate future trends, that kind of thing. It's a good commute listen, way more interesting than subway noise. And that's it for day 3. We're on day 4 of my first 30 days as a CIO. I need to start getting my arms around my IT infrastructure. Building trust means getting to the 4 nines of availability, having your servers up 99.99% of the time, facilitating business continuity, digital continuity, scalability, resiliency, infrastructure trust, wait time 0, downtime 0, that kind of thing. If trust is your North Star, and it is, it starts with your infrastructure. There are a ton of docs that you want to study, from your network architecture to your operational run books, from info about your formal and informal data centers to any cloud providers you're using or plan to use. Just like with software or your software inventory, always assume that the people before you were smarter than you, not just well-intentioned, but doing their best given legacy business priorities and budget constraints. The other reason to hold off any quick judgment on your infrastructure is that you need to first understand your larger software stack, all the tools that your folks use to build and operate their application systems, platforms, whether they're bought, built, or more likely integrated. You need context. Just like all businesses need a client context, software needs a business context, and infrastructure needs a software context. That's the right way to think about scalability, resiliency, security, and ultimately, trust. It's important to apply the 2 ideas we talked about yesterday to infrastructure. 1, your IT roadmap is all about building trust, and 2, trust is measurable. Ask a simple question about your production support. How many of your outages over the last year were reported by your users versus your monitoring? How many times did users complain about an application being slow or inaccessible, even if it didn't become a major incident? How often did you find after an incident was resolved that it was a hardware issue, a network issue, storage, an expired cert, an unannounced security patch? Your first chance to serve all your stakeholders, internal and external, is to help your infrastructure team prioritize the virtuous work they've always wanted to do: world-class monitoring. There are a ton of good reasons that work isn't being done or done fast. The answer many times, again, not just in infrastructure, is governance, a common framework for prioritization. It's usually more acute in infrastructure because governance tends to prioritize itself to first focus on the outer shell, the client, the sales activity, or on the next layer down, the business operations, or the layer after that, which is software, in that order. And in theory, they'll eventually get to that infrastructure core, but in practice, there's enough yummy goodness in that outer candy shell that you'll never get to the gummy center. Or Tootsie Rolls even still a thing. Anyway, your goal for infrastructure, day 4, is to start the conversation about how to find production issues before your users or clients do. You can make it a game. That'll start threads about governance, about how you can help your team by engaging the business, ops, your software development team, security. Connect those dots, grease the wheels of collaboration. Day 4 bibliography, The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. It's entertaining. It's worth reading because every other book about tech is either a biography or something meant to scare you. Plus, there's nothing like fiction to teach you about the principles and practices of DevOps. If you don't have the time to find real-world business school case studies. This is a decent proxy to reflect on managing technical debt, on dealing with conflicting priorities, aligning IT with business goals. Book number 2, The Cloud Adoption Playbook by Mo Abdullah and like 6 other authors. Cloud adoption used to be about complexity and uncertainty, but now that it's matured, it's bearable. You still need a primer because cloud adoption is not one size fits all. So a better place to learn about the cloud is directly on AWS or GCP or Azure, but their training gives you theoretical examples. Mo's book gives some real world use cases from various industries and organizations. And finally, if you're not a book person, you're more of a podcast person, try the platform-specific podcasts from Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, depending on which cloud you're going to align with or have aligned with, or if you're going to go multi-cloud, one or more podcasts. Anyway, that's it for day 4. It's the end of week 1 as the CIO, and all your conversations, all the demands you're fielding across your stakeholder discussions, internal and external, are questions of prioritization. That's because of 2 potential dysfunctions. The first is that hierarchical organizations tend to keep pushing the decision-making buck up the management chain, and leadership, not just at the CIO level, but throughout the org. Leadership means the buck stops with you. That doesn't mean you have to solve the problem alone. It just means that you are the recruiter in chief for the teams that'll tackle the issue. That team can include anyone to your left or right and or people above you. You as a leader at any level can delegate up. Don't be the person who says something is above your pay grade, because that's simply validating why you're not paid more. The second reason everything sounds like a prioritization discussion is that your PMO, your project management office, is either missing as a practice or it exists but lacks real authority and autonomy. If it's missing, then tribal prioritization is already in place for all your projects, which means there are organically grown power brokers and processes in the org. That might be effective for project delivery. The lack of transparency, it's not healthy. It leaves the business, even those who are plugged into the informal delivery networks, the informal prioritization networks, with legit feelings of learned helplessness. You need an empowered PMO. And I don't just mean people. I mean a process, a framework agreed to by all your stakeholders that gets the larger org to commit to the relative value and impact of every project, of all potential IT spend. Project prioritization needs to be stack ranked. What's the first priority? What's the second priority? All the way down to the last priority, with no 2 projects sharing the same priority, so no ties. That'll set the stage for proper capacity planning. How? Through the principle of single-threaded ownership. Simple thought exercise. Take your priority 1 project and list the names of every person who needs to contribute. The PM, project manager, the BA, business analyst, the SME, subject matter expert, the engineers, et cetera, et cetera. Be exhaustive. Then move to project priority 2 and do the same. But as soon as you list a name that's already been attached to a higher priority project, stop, defer that project to the next quarter, and move to the next priority. Keep attaching names until there's a repeat. Stop, defer, move down. Keep doing that for the whole project list. The projects you didn't defer, the few that are fully staffed with real names, not TBDs, are the ones that exemplify single-threaded execution. They're the ones that will deliver properly. They'll get delivered first. Why? A team of multitaskers is adding months, perhaps years, to a project's delivery. Welcome to your second paradox as a CIO. If you can't wait, you'll wait longer. Single-threaded ownership, leadership, contributorship, single-threaded execution radically speed up your velocity for a small set of prioritized projects. It also counterintuitively increases your chance of delivering your deferred priorities. If you can wait, you wait less. Day 5 bibliography. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. This is the second book on the list about focus. The first one being Deep Work. It sounds obvious, but the way to avoid the trap of multitasking is to radically narrow your focus. Single-threaded leadership. Sounds obvious, but management continues to operate like everyone in the org is an effective multitasker. The reality? No one is. Book number 2 was going to be about Amazon, but all of the authors fawn over Bezos, except one, the honey badger himself, Scott Galloway. So book number 2 is called The Four, the hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. And it'll help you understand and compete with the 4 most influential and dominant entities on the planet, how they've become so powerful. I love Scott's take on it. By manipulating the fundamental emotional needs that we have as humans. Worth a read. There's a good implementation-focused article by Jade Rubik, worth a read. Just Google Amazon single-threaded leadership. And finally, if you're more of a podcast person, try the Prof G Pod with Scott Galloway. First weekend in, I just watched my day 1 through day 5 shorts, and all I kept thinking is being a CIO is more art than science. It's both what you do and who you are. It's rooted in a daily practice that starts with listening and asking hard questions. If your practice asks questions that are easily answered, you're not improving the work. That's why management is more of an art than a craft. If you know what you want to do and you do it, you're a craftsman. If you start with a question, a really hard question, and just let it map your journey, you're an artist. Anywho, I'm meeting a lot of new people in this past week, doing a lot of listening, asking questions that help me put together the puzzle that is the end-to-end business. That's goal number 1. It doesn't feel like drinking from a fire hose. It feels focused. Everyone I've met exudes warmth. That's priceless. I still have to build trust because I'm the unknown. I still have to demonstrate humility because I'm the one learning. New executives tend to signal their worth during their honeymoon with statements like, "This is an opportunity-rich environment, wink, wink." I'd say the same, but not because of what I'm bringing to the game. The quality of the team on the ground makes it an opportunity-rich environment. Reasons to be grateful, I suppose. And to be fair, it's not enough to be grateful for the opportunity. I have to turn that gratitude into action, into service to my team and to our clients. Looking forward to week 2.